Are we on? Good morning, everyone, and thank you for those who have joined us and anticipating others that are yet to join in. This is a very special day. Historically, contemporary, it's a day we take to reflect, to remember, and to still discuss about the challenges about the workforce and the labor force, right? The historical struggles that we've had to overcome to get better working conditions. And we're still not there. We're still reflecting. And that is one of the things we're taking today to discuss about a contemporary issue, which is the impact and the influence of artificial intelligence on the workforce, especially the human in the loop, those behind all the benefits of artificial intelligence that we are enjoying, those behind that do the screening and some of the work that has real impact on the persons doing this job, right? And so we have an amazing group of panelists today, which they will introduce themselves in a few minutes to help us reflect and think about what the impact of AI or working within this sector of AI means, and if we are doing enough, or what can we do to make the working conditions of these people advancing this technology that is benefiting the whole society. Are we doing enough? And what can we do to make the working conditions better, particularly when it comes to mental health, which generally is not discussed enough when it comes to working condition. We have occupational safety and health. If you're working in a very hazardous condition, we all know you have to think about, the physical safety of your workers. But when it comes to mental health, there is room for us to do more than we are doing now, which is exactly what today our panelists would be discussing. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kauna. And then our panelists will introduce themselves in a few minutes. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you would please engage in the comment section. Let's make today productive and engaging for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Kauna, over to you.
Thank you, Sarah, too, for that. And I'll allow Angela, who is our moderator today, to take the lead. Thank you.
Thank you, Kauna, and thank you, Saratu, for starting it off. I'm very grateful for this day because it's a culmination of struggle, and it's also a reminder and a day of reflection for workers. And I'd just like us to, before we start this session, because today is Workers' Day or Labor Day, I think it's very important to just go around through the panelists as an introduction, because there's so much going on. Firstly, we are experiencing a loss of workers' rights in the 21st century. And these are things that were fought for in the 19th century, like a weekend, for instance, is something that workers fought for. An 8-hour workday is something that workers fought for. And yet we've seen those things just vanish in thin air. We're working 24/7. And our rights in the workplace, social protections, issues that workers fought for, like medical cover, paternity leave, maternity leave, etc. All these things have disappeared. And, we're in a socio-political context that is actually very strange. We are seeing, workers' rights disappear. There's a rise of the right-wing ideology across the world. It's like we're auditioning for fascism. And so I'm very worried about what is happening to workers. And given that yesterday or the day before yesterday, we just got news that the convening in Zambia in RightsCon was cancelled, was postponed and then cancelled. We do not know the state of things. And this is not something that we should actually naturally accept as normal. I think we need to sit down and reflect, like, why are they canceling such important convenings this day and age where we need to convene more, we need to talk about these issues, because we're living in a polycrisis, right? So we are experiencing not only workers' rights decline, but also environmental catastrophes. We're experiencing so many things going on at the same time. Our mental health is declining, which is actually tied to just our physical health. The food systems are collapsing. We cannot continue this monocropping because of the climate change. And I mean, it's across the board. So I just like to, before Kauna gives her keynote, like just to go through some of the panelists to just give a little bit of their reflections on this day, the importance of this day, and then we can get to Kauna, our superstar, to the convener of this meeting. So maybe perhaps I can start with Joanne on your reflections on the day.
Sorry, there's a bit of background noise from me. I just want to introduce myself, and then I moved to a place where there's not going to be this much noise. But I'm Joan Taylor, and I am a former worker now organizing with a group. We call ourselves the Data Leaders Association. So I really thank you, Kauna, for having me be part of this conversation, given the fact that I have been struggling with mental health, and I'm also a woman and also been part of this work for the longest time. Yeah, so I'm just very happy to be part of the conversation.
Thank you, Joan. We can go to Kauna.
Thank you, Angela and Joanne. And thank you everyone who has made the time to join us today in this very important conversation. To be honest, for me, this is quite personal. Apart from being a worker, it's a personal journey that I have worked in and I'm still working in. And I will tell you, it hasn't been an easy one. Mental health issues are things that we take for granted. When we have a headache, when our arms hurts, our head aches, we are very quick to seek support, to go to the hospital, to just get the help that we need. But when it comes to mental health, there's quite a lot that we try to just dismiss, we try to just ignore. And reason being our culture, the way we've been trained, the stigma, but also most importantly, because we want to protect our self-image, right? No one wants to be seen as someone who is struggling with mental health issues. But today, that gives me so much joy that we're talking about this in such a space. We can be vulnerable. We can talk about our struggles. We can share our experiences, not because we want to share them, but because we want to let others know it's just okay to feel the way you feel. It's okay to go through these feelings that, are with us each and every day. And hence, today, it's a very important event and also a point for reflection for all of us, not even as a worker, but also as a woman, as an activist, as an advocate, people who speak on behalf of others. The struggles are the same for every one of us, and it's valid, it's okay. And I'm so happy that the beautiful women on this platform today made out the time on a public holiday to join us in this conversation. And I'm sure we're going to talk a lot about our own personal lived experiences as workers and also as women, and also as individuals and as Africans who are concerned about the African continent and what's happening around workers in this continent. And so thank you so much. And I'll allow Angela to lead the session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kauna. And I'm very grateful to see Patience has joined us, who is a mental health expert. And I just maybe give her the chance to familiarize herself. She just came in. We were just talking about what the meaning of Workers' Day means for us. And I would just like you to chime in and introduce yourself before we get to the keynote address.
Okay, good morning, all. Happy Workers' Day. My name is Patience Olawi. I reside in Jos, and I'm also a practicing professional. Nice to have you in this meeting.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Patience. John, would you like to share your reflections on the day, because you just introduced yourself and you were looking for a better space just before we get to Kauna to address us and to give us the context of the algorithmic context?
Struggling to hear what you're saying, but I think I have context around what you've asked. So I think some 3 years ago, Labor Day was just another holiday for me. Like, you're not going to work, you cannot have it was just another holiday, just like anybody else. I did not know the importance of Labor Day or the significance of Labor Day. Fast forward to when we started organizing, and then everybody is asking us as Data Laborers Association, what do you have planned for Labor Day? Now I started asking myself questions. So what is so important about Labor Day? Because I have come to learn the importance of this day. It's just for people to reflect how important workers are and how their input into different fields, how they're being appreciated, or are they to just appreciate workers for whatever field they're working in. For us as data workers, especially for somebody who has worked in both platform and a BPO setting, it was just a normal working day. It is like, I don't know, I think the past 3 years is when I have had a day of Labor Day. Back then it was continuous work, and it's you're working for a salary that does not make sense. And I feel like I have had that conversation for a very long time. It has become now sounding so, but now I'm starting to recognize the importance of having us recognized as part of workers. And I feel like maybe back then we did not we did not see any relevance, because the work we are doing as data workers is not labeled as a job. It's like, so I feel like now it's important even for us, like when we have themes, we are being recognized as data workers, and then there's also conversations around how this work is supposed to be categorized or where we are supposed to fall in. So I feel like we are starting to have the right conversations in the right time. And I feel now as a person, I've also started learning the importance of the day, because back then it was just a normal day.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, John, for those reflections, because now they give context of, Labor Day, Workers' Day. At some point, we've even stopped celebrating Workers' Day, yet we're workers. We don't see the wins. And as Kauna is coming in, I'd just like us to, I'd request her to give us the context, because, like we think of algorithms, what is even an algorithm, the trauma that it causes you, we're talking about data workers. These are new and emerging forms of work that didn't exist 20 years ago. In 1990, 30 years ago, people did not know you did not even imagine in your career you'll ever be a data labeler or a content moderator. You'll be saying you're a doctor, you'll be a lawyer, you'll be all these traditional careers. But you see, now this is a new form of work, emerging form of work. I don't want to call it new anymore, because it's been here for quite a while. But the fact that it's not even recognized as work, that's some of the issues that we're going to talk about in terms of how it impacts mental health. And it's exactly what Joanne has said and reflected on. Like, she didn't even know. She's not even somebody who's classified as a worker. And so I'd really like you to highlight some of those issues as you're giving your keynote. I hope to see a deeper understanding of what this algorithmic trauma means, just for the sake of anyone in the audience who may not have an understanding of this before. Thank you. Thank you so much, Kauna, and welcome.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you, all the speakers who have shared. And I think we're going to go deeper into it. And today is International Workers' Day. And for me, it's a very significant day, personally for me. And I think also for the workers all over the world. We will not talk about Workers' Day without emphasizing uh, the need and the conversation around mental health. And we'll talk about algorithms. Algorithms, a few years back, when we talk about algorithms, it was such a big word. And even for me as a worker in this space, I didn't really think about it as a big deal, right? When we talk about algorithms, these are, contents that, maybe you've just searched, I want a bag, a black bag on Jumia or one of the shopping platforms. And before you know it, everywhere you just log in, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, you're just seeing bags, black bags everywhere. So now we're like, okay, how did this happen? I just searched innocently on maybe Google even. And now everywhere I open, the bags everywhere. And that also tells us that when you talk about algorithms, it's just a pattern that follows us almost, it's a like on all our digital footprints, right? It just goes with us, regardless of who we are, how we think our data is protected. It just goes with us. But as workers, when we are going to specify this on workers, we see that workers have been exploited on all levels, where workers like Joanne here will tell us how um, she has been asked to share photos of her child, her environment, and all that. And now we see that it's, you can't even relate it on a not as a normal human being. Be like, okay, it's fine, I'll just share. But later on, you get to understand how this follows you and the replication and how far this data has gone, even beyond the African continent, far even on the other side of the world. And as workers, that has affected us in all areas of our lives, where you just signed a contract or you just took up a job. And after taking up the job, you resume your work. And then before you know it, contents are being, you've been exposed to toxic contents. When I mean toxic contents, really toxic contents, where you can't even imagine how it would affect your life 10, 20 years, 30 years later. And this trauma goes with you because people think, okay, when I leave the job, it's fine. This chapter of my life is just over. I will start up a new life. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen. You realize that this algorithmic trauma goes with you. It affects your family. It affects your loved ones. It affects the most basic things that you feel has no connection with the work that you do. And hence, we cannot overemphasize the need for workers to realize how this work really affects their mental health. I'll talk about my own personal experience. When I started my work as a Facebook content moderator, it's exciting to work for Facebook, right? Very exciting. And even the prestige that comes with it. But unfortunately, you can't even talk about it because now you've signed an NDA where you cannot even talk about. So it's only you and your colleague know that you work for Facebook and how the big tech platform is, how you're able to look at people's profile. You can see their Facebook messengers. You can review their profiles. Those things at first would look so exciting. But then when reality comes where you have to watch, I am from Nigeria, the northern part of Nigeria, where we're dealing with terrorism attack, insurgency, and all that. The Boko Haram experience. I personally have seen the experience, like how it really affects you to see all this, gruesome contents. And now coming back to work, and I can now see them while moderating contents far in Nairobi in Kenya. So you can just see how the trauma travels, right? Now you can see the connection, because I thought, okay, I've left that. I'm trying to forget about everything that have happened. I want to move on with my life. And now I have to watch this contents every day of my life during the 4 years that I worked. So you can imagine the trauma. First, it started as shortness of breath. I couldn't breathe. Like I just can't breathe. So all of a sudden, I'm breathless. I went to the hospital. I was given an inhaler. No one has asthma in my family. We never had a history of anyone who is asthmatic. So, they keep asking you, do anyone have asthma? I'll be like, no. But now it persisted. It became so worst that when it starts, I'm just at a near-death experience. And remember, I'm a clinical psychology student doing my master's in an American university in Kenya. But I couldn't even relate how the theory with the practical experience, because I felt it's far-fetched. Like, we read it in the books, how to diagnose an individual going through anxiety, depression, PTSD, and all that. But now when it's happening to you, you realize your own biases, your own sentiments, your own culture, your own, everything that has really hindered you begin to play a huge role, because I couldn't even think about having a mental health illness at that point, because I felt, okay, I relocated from Nigeria, the weather, I could give every other reason, but not mental health. And that, for me, makes me more passionate about what I do, because I've worn the shoe both as an expert and also as someone who has lived experience with mental health challenges. And that has really uh, shaped my own view of how mental health is seen, even by us Africans, by us as workers. We tend to minimize, we tend to just give it any other name. But the moment we begin to call them the names that they are, I'm going through mental health challenges, we begin to name them. It also informs others, it creates awareness, it gives us also the responsibility of trying to get the help that we need. Because most of the times, no one wants to be called, okay, Joanne is depressed, Kauna is depressed. No one wants to be labeled that way. But in terms for us to get the help that we need and also to accept what we are going through, we have to name them. Naming them is one step. And for me, the moment I realized this was what I was going through, yeah, I fought those issues where I don't want to be called, oh, she's depressed, she has anxiety, she has this. But over the years, I realized that we have people going through health challenges where we are very empathetic to them. We'll be, okay, this one lost an arm, you know, is going through cancer treatment. We are very empathetic and we just want to give them all the support. So why can't we do the same when it comes to mental health? And that's a question I'll pause there for us to just reflect on. Why do we think we cannot publicly talk about our mental health? Is it about us? Is it about what people would think? Is it about the society? Is it about what is that thing that won't allow you to say, oh, I'm having a stomach ache today, I don't feel good, and say, today I'm so low because I'm struggling with depression, and today I feel so low. Why do we feel there's a difference? And all this is all in the health context, so regardless of physical health or mental health, but it's in a health context. But why do we feel this different? So I'm just going to leave us at that. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Kauna. That was very, very insightful. And I like how you ended it and saying, why are we not talking about this as health in general? Because also this idea of separating mental from the physical health makes it, and that's one of the issues that actually increase the stigma of the mental health part. Because it's like you can acknowledge you're sick, you can acknowledge you have a stomachache, but you can't acknowledge that you're not feeling well today, you know? you've been sad for 10 days in a row. That's not normal. And so it also needs to be checked into, because, emotions come and go. But when it's a constant, steady state of being in a certain form of darkness, then it means you're not okay. And just based on what you said, also in terms of thinking of as is there stigma around mental health issues in our own context? And one thing I do a lot of late has been reading fiction books, and everything that comes out of it makes me understand, like historical fiction makes me understand that the stigma in the African societies around mental health keeps persisting, because one of the books I read is Chintu by Jennifer Makumbi from Uganda. And the book actually highlights how suicide was treated as, it's a curse. Somebody who died of suicide is not given a proper burial. They're cast away, and their children are not treated well in the society. And there's another book, an old classic book by Maurice Konde called Segu, which talks about the kingdom of Segu just right before, during the colonial period, during the slavery period in the late 18th and 18th century and the beginning of 19th century. And they talk about two suicides were mentioned, like people threw themselves in wells. And so not even acknowledging that people are actually going through a lot of mental trauma in a society is one of the things that keep persisting. Like, these are books written about the 18th century, and these are problems that are still persisting in the 21st century. So I'm very curious to see Patient's perspective on this, because she has the clinical psychology background as well. And I'd like to invite her to just chime into the panel. I see Irene has joined, but we'll introduce her after Patient speaks. Thank you.
Good morning once again, and I'm glad to be on this platform. Is today, Kaun, I'm realizing that you actually work with AI. I told you just she has been interested in writing about AI. I noticed most of our work is on AI. I never knew that you are actually behind the scene. Kudos to you, kudos to your colleagues, and that if only you are the ones behind the scene, we that are watching here are traumatized. I can only imagine how you guys are feeling. Today, as we mark Labor Day, I want to draw our attention to hidden workforce data workers and content moderators who power artificial intelligence system. Like the individuals spend hours daily reviewing disturbing content, such like violence, abuse, and hate speech, and all that. But I want to share a brief story of one woman, of a certain woman I once encountered. Now, on the surface, she seems fine. She showed up to work, met her target, keep going up and down in the office, making sure she put everything in place. But over time, this woman began to experience intense anxiety. When I say intense anxiety, you can imagine how if you're anxious, I don't know. Intense anxiety is very severe, where you can't even place your hand on what is actually happening to you, but this thing is eating you up and you don't actually want to talk or explain that feeling to anyone. So she couldn't sleep. Certain images she reviewed during the day will replay in her mind at night. She can't sleep and she refused to talk. She started avoiding conversation, feeling emotionally numbed and constantly on edge. And this woman, the difficult part was this: she didn't initially recognize that her job was the source of her distress. So when Kauna was explaining all that, I was just imagining about the woman. So they are behind the scene. Now, if my work is a distress to me, I should be able to talk. I should be able to speak up. But this woman keep holding, numbing the information, however she is feeling, to her very own self. Not talking, and then is actually disturbing her sleep. So she thought she just needed to be stronger. That is what women does, and a lot of men too, or all the workers that are in a distressful situation. I have to, I have to keep working, and I don't bother what is actually happening to me, or people around me don't even take notice of what is the change around me, and she keeps showing up for this work. That is the reality for many data workers today. This repeated exposure leads to what we now call the algorithm trauma, a form of psychological harm similar to a vigorous trauma and burnout. But today, as a clinical psychologist, I see clear symptoms of anxiety, emotional numbness, and even intrusive thoughts and depression. So we work for our we labor in our various company, our various organization, even those of you that work behind the scene and on the internet, like the data moderators and the rest.
Patience, we're losing a little
What
bit.
are these organizations or women in this field are under exposure, and then the limited. Okay, I think it's the network, because earlier on when you guys were talking, I was actually missing out some part. I was actually saying, I as a clinical psychologist, what I want to say this morning is the clear symptoms are everywhere. You could see the anxiety is there, emotional numbness is there, intrusive thoughts, and even depression. And I said earlier that women in this field are especially vulnerable due to the gender exposure and limited access to support. Yet despite these risks, protection are minimal. Protection are actually minimal, and there's a little recognition of their mental health needs. Weak labor protection and limited accountability, even within the digital support chain. And this raises an important question this morning. Can we truly call AI ethical if the people behind it are being harmed? Can we? Can we truly call AI ethical if only our workers are being harmed? And if only our workers can be removed at any time without giving sign? Do we think of what they are going to be passing through, the trauma, the nights? In fact, in the trauma comes a lot of symptoms of malaria. And you can imagine such moderators to tell us that I'm depressed. And because I work with AI, why are you depressed? You people that have money, you people that are doing this, we keep people that we work for don't even bother or care about matters. So is AI to move forward? We can also, as an occupational risk, provide trauma-informed mental care will help us to strengthen labor protection and also ensure gender sensitivity policies around, as well as we are working in all diverse perspective. Take care of your mental status. Take care of your mental health. Discuss about it. I have a malaria. I run to the doctor. So what is so special about me running to the hospital to see a doctor for review, for check? And I don't want to run to a mental health practitioner for help. If my office aren't bother about my well-being or my mental health well-being, I should bother about it. And today, if anyone speak to us, this is how they are feeling, I couldn't sleep, pay attention to what this person is trying to tell you. Because if the office space aren't providing such an opportunity, we colleagues, we friends, we family members should be able to pay attention to such an individual. If you're mentally sound, your work will go well. Why is it that when we have other symptoms of illnesses, like let me say you are feverish, you write to the office, you are down, you're feverish, but so long as you know that you couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, those activities that I love doing, I don't really participate in them again. You don't write to your office to tell them that you are down or you have a mental breakdown. I want to take a break. We only want to interfere or consider our health when it comes to fevers and other symptoms. In order not to say much, I want to say that as we celebrate Workers' Day today, everything behind the screen, because of the innovation, should never come to the cause of human well-being. Thank you.
I think even the barking of the dog is in agreement that, this cannot be an issue that is ignored. Like, we cannot be having all this innovation and mental health is at the cost of the innovation. People's well-being is really put on the line. And I don't know where John went, but I'd really like to invite her back into the conversation. But in the meantime, because Irene has joined, I'll just give the opportunity for her to introduce herself and her expertise, because she's working around AI ethics, and it's something that patients actually mentioned. Like, how can AI be ethical when everyone behind the scenes who's working behind the AI scenes is suffering mentally? So Irene, kindly introduce yourself just before we get John back in.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi,
Of
everyone.
course.
Happy Labor Day. Excuse me. Happy Labor Day to every worker, to every woman who, shows and pushes for better terms for everyone in the workplace and in our economic opportunities, really. I'm so glad to be part of this conversation. And I was speaking to Kauna and I was trying to help her see that mental health and well-being at the workplace is very paramount. In addition to that, in the digital world, it's even more paramount because and based on the tools we use, the data we are accessing, the visuals and sounds we are hearing. I think for very many of us, we can agree we've heard of families or we've heard of young ones who are also growing up with a lot of mental health challenges or issues because of the dynamics of the content, sounds, voices, art, or visuals that they are seeing. So in the same way, those who are working to support these content, images, and these platforms to really drive and work well, think of the gaming platforms, think of social media platforms, think of our work platforms. I know all of you use either your Google, you use your Microsoft, or you use, other work tools. There's a lot of color. There's a lot of sounds that you're hearing. At some point, emails come in, you're hearing a lot of sounds from the notifications. On your phone, people are calling you. So all these dynamics are presenting to us a challenge as a humanity, really, to sit down and ask, are we really supposed to be dealing with these kinds of noises, voice, audiovisual content, all at the same time? And together with that, we have our borders outside being driven. We have our cars. There's a trailer, Angela, Kauna, our Okadas are passing us. So there's a lot of things that are being presented to us at this time that we need to sit down and reflect as a humanity. Are we really prepared to take this in our bodies, to take this into our minds, and to take this as a humanity, really? And the truth of the matter is those who are researching it and those who are still exploring, those who have worked in it, like Joanne, like Kauna, can tell us, no, we are not prepared. They've told us this time and time again because they've been behind the desk, behind these platforms, and they can see the kind of content that's being put out. And they've been able to moderate more content that should not even be put out. They've been able to moderate videos. They've been able to moderate shapes, sounds that cannot even be put out to the public. So you can imagine the exposure they've already had, together with what every other day person is experiencing. So in as much as there's a very clear challenge, there's a very clear problem in front of us, there's still a challenge and an issue where our governments have not yet been able to explore this area to put the right protective measures for our children while they grow up, or to put mechanisms that will also prevent and allow us to have mental health breaks even as we work. I know there are some countries that have also put maybe an extra day for time off so that people can have a relaxed time, so that people can unwind before they go back to work. I know there are countries that have said children should not have, just 1 minute. Sorry for that. I know there are very many countries that have started putting measures to protect children. And we've recently seen in Australia where children cannot own a mobile phone until they pass the age of 16 and above, with different mechanisms being put in place. And these are in a guise and in a wake to ensure there's a mental wellness towards access to data and digital devices, so that it's not overwhelming and overburdening the children, and enables them to go to school, understand what's being taught in school, and focus on the school. I hope you can see the psychology there. So in the wake of workers, really, and as we celebrate Labor Day, there should also be mechanisms in our labor laws that say if you're exposed and you're moderating, labeling, or working on the back end of some of these platforms, and we know you are looking at gory images, you are listening to voices, sounds that are quite problematic, we're going to put mental health mechanisms that will ensure that you're able to plug yourself from it and come back when your body has rested, when your mind has rested. The mechanisms are different from country to country, culture to culture, context to context, of course, based on the economic support needs that are there. But our governments should work hand in hand with some of these businesses to ensure that there's a very clear balance where it's a value chain that ensures that the people are still the resource and they're still respected for their talent, for their minds, and for the efforts of going to work, as opposed to people are looking for work, therefore they should do this work. No, it should be, at the end of the day, this work is also work that can give people economic opportunities, and it can be done in a way that protects their well-being, it protects their labor choices, because at the end of the day, we all cannot be doctors, we all cannot be nurses, we all cannot be accountants. There is work for everyone, and we can serve in different capacities. If you look at some of the laws that have been passed at the ILC level, the International Labour Convention, last year in June, finally, gig workers, or, work that has time and time again not been recognized, was recognized as work that needs to be paid well, decently, work that also needs to be given leave and other necessary conditions as there are in a physical workplace, because many people and all of us really understand gig work to be work that's digital. So I think I will leave it at that, with more questions for all of us when you're engaging with policy conversations from a point of, if you're part of the value chain, how can you contribute towards ensuring there are a lot of preventative measures so that other future generations are not hurt, other future generations are not being put in harm's way based on what we've all experienced and based on what some countries are leading with. So if there are multinational campaigns, how can we rally behind them and ensure they also apply to Africa, to Nigeria, to Kenya, to India? If there are conversations at the ILO level, at the International Labour Organization level? How can we provide more evidence for their studies to really inform mental health and place of work policies? Because these will continue changing. The more the apps are coming up, the more the colors are coming up, the more the sounds are coming up, the more you're using your phone, many of these challenges will continue to grow. And I'll hand over to you back, Angela. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Irene. I think you've started highlighting some of the issues from a policy background, because that's where your expertise lies. And when you're thinking of something like AI and ethics, Joanne has the lived experience of, what does it look like? How is AI ethically shaped, or is it even can it even be shaped ethically? Irene left me with some questions and some reflections, but perhaps I'll raise it after Joanne speaks, because I think some of the issues that Irene raised can actually be directly addressed by Joanne, in terms of what is ethical AI and because for the sake of the audience and other people who are not aware, perhaps what did you find? Is there something like ethical AI, Joanne? Is it something that exists, and can it exist? And what did your work expose you to in terms of speaking of, because today we're speaking about mental health? What are some of the things that charged you mentally, or that made you reflect on starting to fight for workers' rights even within the association from a mental health perspective?
I feel like when Patience was explaining about the woman, the lady, she was speaking about me. The only difference is that I did not do content moderation, but there's a lot of mental health issues when it comes to artificial intelligence. And it does not solely lie on the fact that people are working on graphic content. It's also because of how people are being treated. Like, you do not feel like a human, you feel like less of a person. It's like you're in a school. You feel, anytime you meet management, you feel like you want to run back to where you're from. Like, it's a state of mind. It's like you're constantly in a fight or flight. Like, you do not know what to do for yourself. You are over the age of 18, but you feel like, now I feel like you don't know if you're doing anything wrong, but you feel like you're constantly doing something wrong. I don't know. I don't know how they maintain that environment of really making people feel like less of humans and very inefficient. Like, there's a lot of things that are done to you, and then every time you're self-sabotaging. So I remember the time that I started having the mental health issues. As Kauna was saying, like, I also started with the issues about breathing. You don't know what is happening. You can't breathe. You can breathe. You also feel like there's this huge cloud that is on top of your head, like something bad is about to happen. And I remember immediately this episode started happening, my kid was not feeling well and she had fevers. And I went to get medicine for her. I was literally running and I was sweating when I was running. And I am like, when I was, but I did not know I had issues. Another thing is, when you work, I was living with my mom because my kid was still so small. So you have to have somebody who's taking care of you. So I do not know how I'm supposed to communicate to this person that I'm living with. This is what I'm feeling. I completely took myself from people, and I'm a very social person. I do not know how to have conversations. I do not want to be labeled a certain way. And like, I was just going through this alone, and there's a lot of social anxiety when you're in this space. Like, you do not want to see anybody, you do not want to have conversations with anybody. Every time you're in front of people, you pretend, but then on the inside there's a lot of, I was literally shaking at some point, and I could not board matatus, which is a very common type of transportation here in Kenya. So when I was having all these issues, I honestly, it's not that I did not have people to talk to, but also, like, as a culture here in Africa, it's not easy to have a conversation around your mental health. And I feel like we need to create a very a good environment for people to
just have a conversation and say and tell people like, I am not feeling well. This is what I'm experiencing. And because back then I have not had people tell me they have had this sort of feeling. So I felt like I was very alone. I honestly did not know who to talk to. So I feel like even for us as a society, we need to have these conversations even within ourselves. Like, it's okay, like this happens. There's a time you will have this and these issues, and it's okay to speak about it. It's okay. We are going to go through this. Another thing I think I also wanted to point out is even the medics have a part to play, especially people working in the mental health career. So when Kauna left Kenya, we were left stranded. So now we do not have any person who knows mental health and has a background in the type of work that we are doing, which has also been a huge struggle for even us as an association or even like workers, because now we need to look for people and then explain to them the type of work we are doing so that now they can think about the remedies and the types of counsel they can give the workers, right? So that's a lot.
John, are you there? I think we've lost you. Yeah, this is also the challenge of working on Zoom and online platforms. They also are difficult to connect sometimes. But anyway, I think what Joanne has said has been quite insightful. I think she's Joanne. Well,
Something about algorithmic trauma.
sorry.
I wanted to talk about trauma.
We can't hear you clearly,
The trauma
Patience.
part before she comes back.
Okay, go ahead.
So I want to though I joined late, but like I think because of how the network has been breaking, trying to get we've been discussing, and I was thinking about the psychological or emotional harm people experience because of how automated system, algorithm, or AI make certain decision about our lives. Now, think of it as trauma by code. Trauma by code. Now, algorithm is a step-by-step kind of a thing. Like the algorithm itself isn't evil. It's not bad, but the way it works can actually create real distress, like a real distress, and especially when it's unfair, opaque, or repeated over time. Now, the algorithm part is the automated system that rank, filter, flag, and also even deny or recommend things. Like for instance, social media feeds that that social media feed that keeps showing up or showing us triggering content, and then even content moderation boots that ban you from they can ban you from doing certain things without any clear reason. That one can actually upset the users. Now, the predictive policy or even the welfare fraud dictation system is also part of it. But my main concern is the trauma part. The trauma part where we the harm isn't just It's just annoying. It's an annoying tech. It can look like one is being powerless. You can't even appeal, explain, or even talk to a human. The decision is final because the computer says so. Now, when we look at the invisibility, that's the system misclassifies your identity, the language, the accent, and or even our body language. E.g., let me say our facial recognition, not seeing how will I put it, black faces or moderation, and wrongly flagging LGBTQ, most of the time as adults. This actually happened to us in one of our last webinar. If Kauna can remember, we are just online like this, and then something just came up. We are all traumatized. From where? What's happening? So repeated harm, getting denied by housing algorithm 20 times, or a grief, like a grief-stricken person constantly show art. They keep showing you art for babies, clothes, even after a miscarriage, or after like, let me say you are trying to conceive. I know AI works, or our let me say, for like using the Facebook, you keep seeing art. Maybe it's because of how your activities on the phone. We actually don't have privacy, because if I've been monitoring my menstrual cycle, I will keep on seeing art that is actually telling me baby boy is coming to your house, your baby girl is coming into your life. It can be so traumatizing. Other people are grieving, people are worrying. You keep showing art based on what is actually happening in the life of that person. So allow people to grieve naturally without reminding them of the past, even if I'm not saying it's evil, it's good, but we should act, if they can actually minimize that. You can't be traumatizing the people behind the scene and then keep traumatizing the users. So
Yeah, thank
that
you.
is it about.
I think Joanne is back in and she was in the middle of speaking when the network cut her out. So I'd just like to reinvite Joanne back in because she hadn't finished her what she was
Yeah,
talking about on ethical AI. So I kindly invite Joanne to, yeah, thanks.
thank
I'm
you. I
so
was
sorry
sticking
about
on.
that. I don't know
Okay.
what's up with today and everything. Anyway, so I was just saying, the very AI we have now, we cannot term it as ethical, but I think we can work on the future. We can make sure, in case there are future more advanced AI, whatever, we must make sure that it is speaking to the labor aspect of things. It is speaking to genuine ethical AI. Like when we're speaking about genuine, like ethical AI, we're speaking about like from a genuine perspective, not just for the sake of brand protection and all those things. And I think that is why we as workers have started having this conversation, because we want people who are in this sector, or people who are working in policies and maybe more advanced technologies, to have a little background around the harm that these things are causing. So now people can make decisions based on an information they have, based on people's experiences, based on the harm and the bad things that they're seeing artificial intelligence has caused. So in future, what we have encountered, how we have suffered mentally, how we have suffered physically, this is not something we want. We want something that in the future that looks at looks on all components of what is making it work, and then put all these things into consideration when coming up further technologies. And I was also supposed to speak about the content of the projects that we do. So among one of the projects that we usually work on is the one that Kauna mentioned, where it starts very small. Um, Give me a photo of yourself sitting behind a desk, and next is give me 5 photos of you wearing different headgear. And then things started becoming very weird, because now you're being told photos of your children, and then photos of your children being changed diapers, photos of your children doing cartwheels, and then you're told maybe old people walking. Next time is maybe old people also being changed diapers, CCTV footage. In case you've bought anything, you take a photo of the receipt and all those things. And most of the time, we don't know what this information is being used for, or the end result of whatever it is you're being prompted to do. Another type of project that was very controversial is one that you're given, you're working on an LLM. You have to prompt this LLM very bad things. For example, how do you skin a person alive, or how do you molest a 2-year-old, or all those bad things. So when it comes to the content that is causing so much harm, from just the little explanation that I've given, I'm sorry I've been so graphic without giving you guys warning, but these are just but a few type of contents or projects that you have been given to work on. And as Patience has said also here, that there is no opt-out mechanism. If you opt out, that means you do not have a job. So you opt out, you do not have any income. So what do you do? What does that also make you? It also desensitizes you. It makes you think about things that you originally would have never thought of. How do you think about how does human flesh taste? How do you even start thinking about that? Yeah. So that's, yeah. I think I'm going to pass it back to Angela again for, yeah.
Thank you, Joanne. And yeah, it's actually very disturbing information that we have from that. And we were just talking about ethical AI right before Irene came in to introduce herself. But I would just like to perhaps, is Irene still here or she's left? Okay. Perhaps just a reflection on Labor Day, because we are just slightly after the hour, but and before we invite some members of the audience in the event that there are questions, but some of the things that I thought about when Irene was speaking and then you came in was like, what are some of the new consensus that we should now start thinking about in terms of policy? She brought in a suggestion that we're now exposed, not only tech workers, but tech workers are at the front line of this. And John mentioned that, Kauna, since you left Kenya, there's this sort of gap, because you're the one who was speaking a lot on the advocacy of mental health within tech workers space. And so what are some of the things that we need to do in terms of action going forward? Because we need to talk about this more and more. We need to have more webinars. We need to have more awareness. We need to constantly think about this from an Africa-wide context, because there are also issues that come around this around this issue. For example, when you talk of what this thing called? When the stigma of mental health, and also the lack of understanding, even within associations and unions. So when you're trying to organize workers and you're trying to build in a certain union, for instance, and the union is not understanding that these are actual issues, new issues that need to be addressed. So also that, when you're talking about what needs to change, we need to think even from an organization within our own organizing. When we're saying we are organizing workers, yes, we are organizing for better rights, we are organizing for better pay, but also wellness, because what does it mean when I work here for 10 years and I cannot be a normal human being again anymore? And so these are very important factors to consider when you're talking about organizing organizing Labor Day, and thinking of advocacy steps going forward. And perhaps, I'll go back to Kauna, because we're trying to also brainstorm and imagine and dream what ideally should we talk about in these new forms of work, and not only with tech, because also with tech workers, but also with tech, like being, when Irene mentioned, like it penetrates every day of our lives. Like for me, I can never forget the Microsoft Teams tune, and I think about it every Sunday night. I always think like, oh, I'll be called, and like, and also we're losing our cognitive abilities. As someone was mentioning, like there'll be dementia in the next 10 years among 40-year-olds, and in the next 10 years I'll be in my 40s. So I'm starting to think through this kind of issues, because we're so like I'm calculating something like 65 minus 10 is 55. I know that, but I do it on my calculator. So what happens to our we used to know phone numbers for 10 people. We know people's phone numbers. Nowadays we don't need to, and there's something it's doing to our cognitive ability. And when you think of labor and technology and even how it affects the society and how we relate to one another, mental health is a very big part of it. But at the same time, it's also it's penetrating. There's too much technology. And when you say like, oh, 16-year-olds should not, if you're below 16, you should not own a phone. What does it mean when people do not have care workers in their homes? And that's the only way to entertain the kid. That has become an option. So, Kauna, I think you as a clinical psychologist and someone with a lived experience of this issue, you can talk to us about what should we envision as future workers or the future of work as a dream, as an imagination, before we invite the audience back to ask the questions. Because one of the things I was thinking that was raised from Irene is a for given that AI is now here, but we're not doing less work. We're actually doing much more work than we did before. So we need to campaign for things like a 4-day work week, but those are things that are not coming. So those are some of the debates we are having. And how is climate change, for instance, affecting our work and our well-being, because outside of technology, one of the things that as I said before, we're living in a polycrisis. So what is happening to all these other things that are going on? There's a war, there's a genocide here, and all these things somehow, we can't just live as though it's normal to live through these times. These are unprecedented times. And so how would you, as a for dreaming for workers, for this Labor Day, what should the dream look like? Thanks.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you for the reflection. I found myself just laughing, but yeah, it's true. And in the next 10 years, 15 years, you might feel 40 is far, and then boom, you're there. So we need to have this honest conversations. And for me, looking at it from the future of work, I would say we workers need to raise our voices. Us being here today, it's a sign of solidarity. It's also a sign of us breaking the limitations, breaking those obstacles that have really held us back in the past years. I can just imagine in 2019, 2020, I didn't even know what Workers' Day was all about, just like Joanne have said. And today I look forward to every year's Labor Day so I can just share something to a worker there as a form of encouragement, as a form of awareness, and also for workers to get to know their rights. And when we talk about their rights around mental health, it's okay for you to seek help. And I think we as workers have a huge responsibility. Patients mentioned something earlier saying, even when we write for leaves, we request for leaves when we're physically ill, but when it's mental health, we don't even see, we just push. We say, okay, I'll manage, I'll push. But it's important on a day like this for us to all pay attention to these particular aspects of our lives, which is our mental health. It's okay to talk about it. And now we're creating that atmosphere, we're creating a community where we can openly talk about it. And I just want to say thank you also to Joanne with the work that they are doing. We need worker-led organizations who will openly talk about this, being vulnerable. When you being vulnerable as a leader, as a voice in this space, it's not just about talking about your own experience, but it's also to let others know that it's okay to talk about it. Yeah, stigma, and that's a very big way to minimize stigmatization when it comes to mental health. And I will tell you for a fact that in 2023, when I talked about my own personal journey in my mental health, and now in 2026, I will tell you there's a huge difference because now I can see people openly saying, oh, that thing you shared the last time, it's actually happening to me. And for me, it's a win for me. It's a win for the cause that we are fighting. It's a win for the workers. I can just imagine 100 workers, 200 workers, just storytelling, talking about their mental health. We can imagine this will have a significant impact on over 10,000 workers because now they can say, if Joanne can talk about it, if Angela, if Kauna can talk about it, then why can't I talk about it? And talking about it for us on a day like this, it's for you workers out there to know that you are heard, we've worn the shoes. Our journey wouldn't be the same, but we've worn that shoe to an extent where we can open up and share. We are not where we used to be, but we are on a journey. And I will tell you, healing is gradual. It takes 10 years, 20 years. Healing is step by step, but it's okay for you to seek the help that we need. And, it breaks my heart when Joanne said that, and I will be back. I will definitely be back. So we continue where we stopped. And I just want to say thank you for always, creating that space for workers to know that there's a place where you can seek help. And not even physically being in Kenya, I'm always available. And we're currently running mental health therapy support for data workers and also even for workers. I know patients shared even from the user end. And please reach out to me or any of us that you can see on the call. I know you joined via someone. Maybe we can try to drop our email in the chat box as well. Please reach out to us. We will schedule you for mental health support. Patients here have been one of our key mental health personnel. She has done assessment for workers and all that, which I know maybe she can give us just a brief highlight of what she has been able to see from her interactions with the data workers as well. But just know that there is a space for you to get the help that you need. Don't stay in silence. And I know we have additional 1,000 more workers that have just recently lost their jobs. And I always reflect on how I took the news on the 6th of January 2023 when our project at Sama was declared redundant. And it wasn't a nice experience. It wasn't good. The emotions were all over the place. And for me, it's a place for us to keep talking about this because you can't just wake up as an employer and fire over 1,000 workers without any form of psychological support. It's been 3 years for us. Not even once did this organization reach out and be like, oh, how are you doing? You've not requested for any mental health support. Like nothing. It's like, okay, it's fine. They never showed up and that's it. But there's a form of responsibility during the work, post the job. It's a very major problem, and hence these employers, the workers also should know and push for their rights, and also their care should be the key thing, because it's not about the severance package. It's not about your compensation. You realize after you've left the job, after a year, 2 or 3, and you realize the money is nothing compared to the harm that it has been done to you. And that money cannot even, assist you in your doctor's appointments, the medications and all that. You realize they are not even comparable, because it's a lifetime journey that you're going to embark on without even you knowing. So please reach out, and we're always here to support. Joanne, you're in Kenya, and I'm sure you're very open. Let's all be the safe space for workers can easily run to and reach out and get the help that they need. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kauna. Thank you for that. I'd just like to invite the audience, in the event that there's any question or any comments, thoughts, reflections on this Workers' Day. I'm very happy to open the floor to the audience. And also thank you, Saratu, for putting it in the chat, the contact for the Digital Mental Health Initiative, Digital Rights and Mental Health Initiative. Seems there's no question so far, but let me just then add my reflection and use my role as a moderator.
Just say this in case maybe you're unable to raise your hand. If you want to speak, you can just let us know in the chat box and we can allow you to speak.
Yeah, you can contribute on the chat. Thanks for that, Kauna. One of the reflections that I've had, Kauna, about all this issue is that, when you think of mental health in the workplace specifically, what does it mean to think of it structurally? Because, one of the issues is like, okay, yes, you're exposed to all these sorts of issues, not only for tech workers, but also when I mentioned my reflection of thinking of the Microsoft Teams tune every Sunday night, it's playing in my head. And it's like the Monday blues are coming in. You're thinking your weekend is over already. But also, what are some of the structural issues we need to talk about? Because the other problem that is causing mental health strife amongst workers, for instance, when Joanne mentioned like low pay is something she's been talking about for a long time. And we've just witnessed like civic space increasingly shrinking when RightsCon cannot be held in Zambia, because these are some of the conversations that need to be had. Mental health is one of the panels that is very important when you're talking about the environment and how it affects us, like climate change, etc. Is one of the other important panels that was going to be raised. So I'm starting to think like structural issues are so important to also marry within this conversation of mental health and mental well-being, because when there's no freedom of association, there's no freedom of assembly. Freedom of association is equal to mental health. Freedom of assembly is equal to mental health. When workers are able to talk to each other and able to organize better, able to form associations like the Data Labelers Association, so that people can actually raise some of the issues that are being faced by workers, then we're able to then better advocate for workers' rights. So I also think, much as we're saying, oh, this is what I'm exposed to, there's no psychosocial support. And also, Kauna and Patience and Joan, thinking of the issue of decolonizing mental health, because when people think of mental health, people think of therapy. Can we talk about something outside therapy? Can we just go and dance and shake our hips? Because that is one thing that will take the trauma away. So, and we don't have time to shake our hips anymore. We don't have green spaces to just relax and access easily. So these are some of the issues that, we when we're talking about mental health support, we also need to think about it very holistically. Some of the things that, how do we talk to our children? How can we reduce screen time? So I mean, maybe if any of you would like to contribute to that as we close, this would be nice.
And I think this is open to anyone, even from the audience. If you want to say something, please let us know. I can see, I want to just mention, I can see Susan Kahema. This is one of my colleague and a very good therapist that we work with from Sama, and she has been amazing. Yeah.
So can I say because it's Workers' Day today, can we actually look into little actions? Like what can we do, since we are talking about this algorithmic and trauma, and that it's very okay. However, our feelings are very, very valid, but that however we are feeling, in whatever way, I want to encourage us this day, being Workers' Day, name it plus validate how you feel. What happened to you is actually called the algorithmic harm. But the system treated you unfairly, and that feeling is actually real. So this counters the gaslighting effect. So always, what am I trying to say next is that name it and also validate it. Another thing, document the impact. Document, like it's just like you are like journaling. Sometimes you won't want to talk to someone. Journaling how you're feeling is very important. So you do that as a remedy or an immediate action to how you're feeling. And also, we can also always and often say that find a human, your mother, your brother, your friend, someone that you're very you can hold accountable to him or to her for any action. Speak, talk to someone, and there are people that are not good in writing, and they won't want to journal down how they feeling. So we advise or we encourage that you find a human. And then the next one is that we should also reduce the exposure. You can as well turn off your mute your keywords, turn off memories, use alternative account, so that all those things that keep bringing memories to us, or the memories to from the internet to us that can cause our mental health status can actually be reduced. So we find alternative, and also rebuild urgency. Let those affected, all of us workers, choose the next step, report, ignore, like also we can also recreate contact content. Powerlessness is actually the trauma, but choice is the medicine. Powerlessness is the trauma, but choice is the medicine. So that is it, and God bless us.
All right, so just to add on what you've said, thank you, Patience. And Angela, I remember we always have these crazy conversations. And I miss you physically. I know we are always talking, but I miss you and all our naughty conversations. But I really agree with you that mental health shouldn't be confined in the four walls of a therapy room, especially with the kind of trauma that we've been through as workers. We need to be out there because our social lives have really significantly been impacted. For me personally, I don't even want to go out. I can spend a week in the room without even going out. And I think that's my safest, I feel that's my safest space. And I can just imagine the many workers out there working from home, who have done this kind of work. You've lost contact with a lot of friends. You don't even have friends per se. You bond over your traumas with people. And I think having this outdoor activities, dancing, painting, singing, and that has really, for me in my personal journey, has really helped. Even taking a walk, I just feel like just screaming in the open field. We go to Karura Forest in Nairobi just to go and scream, ride the bicycles and all that. Let's begin to define ways outside the therapy room that will allow people to express themselves. And also, and for me, that's why part of the work that we're doing at Digital Rights and Mental Health Initiative is to see what are the models that will work for us as Africans, because now we need to decolonize even the therapy room. And thank you, Angela, for always reminding always reminding us of decolonizing the therapy room. It needs to be African. It needs to reflect our values. It needs to reflect our culture. It needs to reflect what we hold so dearly, because in that now we find healing. So I'll allow other people to speak. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kauna. Yeah, I always
Before you
forget.
close,
Yeah,
before you
come.
close, I feel like
Need to
I
shake
feel
our
like
hips.
I also
Yeah.
I also want to add something. Let us also be our sister's keeper. So by this I mean, let me have a conversation with you comfortably,
Mhm.
without you judging, without you projecting, without you having your own inputs on my story. Let's just have a listen, even like for us as workers, because we are in the same like in the same spaces. So we should also like create a safe space for us to even have conversations within ourselves. So because for me, I realized that I healed more because I started talking about it. And the people I started talking about it, talking to them, they were listening. I know they were very surprised on the inside, but they did not show on the face. So they listened, and it somehow removed a lot of weight on the impact of the situation on me, to now having people listening in. And yeah, just, you might not have any advice, you might not have any remedies for how I'm supposed to heal, but just listen without judging. Let's have honest conversation, because this is something that is really affecting people. And I feel that is why we are seeing so many people under using or misusing substance abuse and all those things, because that's the only way it's like they are venting out but using a very bad channel. Yeah.
Thank you, Joanne. I think I'll get it back to Saratu to close it for us. Because I don't think I have anything to add. I do not have, and I keep talking, so I'll have to stop myself. Um, Especially when we talk of decolonizing mental health and thinking of ways of mental health, and I think everyone has, Joanne and Kauna specifically, and even Patience, you've really added to it. So I think we can just get it back to Saratu to close it for us. And thank you so much, everyone, for attending. I truly appreciate your time.
Thank you so much to our wonderful panelists. This has been a really eye-opening conversation, a very timely one. And it shouldn't stop here, right? I think we need to take this back to our workspaces. Like Patience was saying about choice. But sometimes if you don't know your choices, then you are powerless, right? So I think having these conversations and giving this awareness, because before you mobilize people to collectively, rise up against some of this very contemporary and new type of traumas and challenges that we're facing in our workspaces, people need to understand both their choices and even the type of problems that they're facing that are very new in so many ways. And it's not just data labelers. I was thinking about surveillance. It's the constant surveillance in the workplace. The fact that you are constantly being surveyed and assessed. You can't catch your breath. I don't know if anyone has experience with drivers. I would want to stop maybe 2 minutes from my house and I'll be like, can you drop me here? And he's like, I can't because I'll be penalized because the pin would show that I dropped you before. And they cannot, it's just so. Let's continue having these conversations. And once again, thank you so much for those who joined us, for our panelists. I hope we have enjoyed the rest of the day and we get to come together again and have these conversations. All right. Bye,
Happy
everyone.
International Workers' Day.
Happy International Workers' Day. Thank you.
Take care. Go and have a cold drink today and just celebrate yourself. You are doing
Also
the
sleep.
best. Yeah. Thank you to all of
Bye.
you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.